7 days, the gods created heaven and the earth. But the second chapter of Genesis is contradictory to the first. They created the watery heaven and earth, and night and day. They separated heaven and earth, created land, then vegetation. After that, they created the sun, moon, stars, seas, and fish, and birds, then animals. And to top it all off, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let him have dominion over everything that creeps on the earth. As a ruler, he was first. When they were finished, they picked the spokesman. I have given you every plant yielding seed, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You should have them for food. They didn't say anything about hamburger, hot dogs, lamb chops, steak and cheese subs, ham hocks, chicken veal, or barbecue. Now in the second chapter, the gods made heaven, then earth, then man, then vegetation, a straight contradiction of the first. Yet he was placed in the Garden of Eden where the first limitation was set. No eating from the tree of knowledge, disobedience means death. Feeling man was lonely, they brought forth helpers, animals, and birds, but this didn't satisfy him, for he was the first. So from his ribs, so the story goes, the gods brought forth a companion from man, called her woman. As a couple, they were first. Now the serpent, knowing the truth about the tree, coaxed the first sin to be committed by Eve, who in turn coaxed Adam to cover the nudity. And the gods, seeing this, they were very displeased when no execution committed the first contradiction and the first eviction by sending the couple Eves. Now the first couple became the first parents of the first son, who became the first murderer and the first refugee, who creates the first question by marrying the first person not a part of this first dysfunctional family. Was Mrs. Cain the first daughter or the first person not discussed in the testament? And who were the people who would hold Cain liable for the first dismemberment? Doesn't it seem odd that God had to mark him for safety? And why were there people in the land of Nod if they weren't put there by the gods?
From the first to the last days, from the first man to the last man, from the first birth to the first sin, to the first book the law was written in, to the last page of the Philippians. From the first to the last days, from the first man to the last man, from the first verse to the first sin, to the first book the law was written in, to the last page of the Philippians.
After deciding the first stage of their experiment was out of order, the gods set out to commit the first mass murder. But first they needed someone they could trust to ensure their experiment would survive. And so the first mortal to become the god's first lieutenant was chosen, named Noah. He was. On the first day of the first month of his 601st year, the first shipbuilder and the first zookeeper. Saw the ground was dry, and on February 27th, he emerged from the first cruise ship and built the first altar, and they committed the first extinction by making the gods their first offering. After first promising Noah this wouldn't happen again, the gods put the first rainbow in the sky as their symbol of their word to man. They allowed meat to be eaten for the first time, and Noah became the first known tiller of the soil, the first person to make and drink wine. The world spoke one language. It was the first and only time it was truly united, but the gods weren't excited. Behold, they are one people, they have one language. This is only the beginning of what they would do. We must swing down, scatter them, disunite, and confuse their crew. In the land of Shinar, there was the first great culture, who were the first to make brick. They were undertaking a great project in a city and a tower that was magnificent. The city was called Babel, or Babel in English, because it was here that the God's plan came together to disrupt man's shit. Now the first person instructed to head to Canaan was a man named Abraham, first mentioned in the Bible as the man Abraham. He and his nephew Lot split the Canaan, with Lot settling in Sodom near the village of the Gomorrah in the valley of the Jordan. Sodom was chosen to be destroyed by the gods because of his wicked ways. It's the first time in the Bible we have a mention of gays. But Lot lived there, so Abraham intervened unsuccessfully, so Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters all had to flee. As they escaped Sodom, Lot lost his wife and his daughters lost their man. Becoming lonely and desperate, they committed the unthinkable sin. The daughters got their father drunk, laid down with him one by one. Then 9 months later, they both bore their own father's son. Now Abraham, married to his half-sister, had no sons, at least not until he was 101. Then Sarah, his sister wife, bore him a child, a miracle from the gods. But they had a test for him to prove his obedience. Now this is the part that gets wild. They instructed Abraham to make the first human sacrifice with his only son Isaac. But in reality, it's just the first with his wife. Sarah's servant Hagar had bore Abraham a son Ishmael, the first adulterous affair mentioned in this twisted holy tale.
From the first to the last day, to the first man to the last man, from the first birth to the first sin, to the first book the law was written in, to the last page of the Philippians. From the first to the last day, to the first man to the last man, from the first birth to the first sin, to the first book the law was written in, to the last page of the Philippians.
Now I've taken you through the first half of the first chapter of the first holy book, and for the first time you see a lot of the first in history. It's up to you in your self-education and your self-discovery, your self-spirituality to decide the integrity of this holy book and others like it, and people around you and the people who preach to you and others about it. Make decisions for yourself, don't have them inflicted by the morals and the values of the secretively wicked. Discover the self-truth about yourself, don't have your friends and parents pick it. You'll soon discover that atheists are wrong, preachers and ministers too. Everybody picks certain parts of everything to mold into truth. Live your life on earth based on your morals and your own personal worth. Before anyone can judge you, you have to judge yourself first. I don't mean to come off anti-Christian, anti-religious, I know I'm not the worst. People die every day because of words and Bible verse. Think about what's forced into your mind by people who censor words. Before anyone can understand you, you have to understand yourself first.
Esau, we saw your downfall style, pull off the wall of hip-hop, breaks down to bring a new rap law, and be the first to call all the rapture, the first code magic, the first trash talk, the first rapper, the first word slasher, tell stories of the past and after, the first verse after verse, as reads from divine scrolls to masters.
I do not like your attitude. You are being disrespectful.